Hey guys, welcome back to Blazed and Confused, and today we're going to be reacting to the UFC London fight card. Now this was one of the best cards I've seen in a long time. Some great performances from all the fighters, a big night for UK MMA, the amount of stars that came from this. There were some brilliant performances from Paddy, from Molly, from Arnold, from Tom. So we're going to be reacting to all the fights on the card. As I say, amazing performances from all the fighters, but kicking off the prelims we had Mohammed Makaya versus Cody Durden. Now this was a big fight for Mohammed Makaya. This was his UFC debut. He had tons of hype and momentum on him. You know, he's unbeaten. He's on a 30-0 win streak coming into this fight across amateur and professional. He's a former champion in another organisation, so tons of hype. He's the youngest fighter on the UFC roster at 21 years old. He had big ambitions coming into this one, and it was just a brilliant fight from bell to end. It lasted not very long, but Mohammed Makaya was able to land a lovely flying knee onto the skull of Cody Durden, send him straight to the ground, and was able to capitalise on that, getting him in a very slick guillotine. Amazing performance from Mohammed Makaya. Just the perfect statement to be made in a UFC debut. Perfect way to open up the card and get a lovely, amazing crowd reaction, which he did. So he really did deliver. The sky is the limit for this kid. I know he called out Tim Elliott, which is a great matchup, a great call out. Puts him into the top 15. It gets him closer to the top 10 and achieving the goal as the youngest champion in UFC history. But moving on to the next fight, we had Mckenna versus Ellis Reed. Now this was a very entertaining fight, a very good performance from Ellis Reed. She was able to stick Mckenna with the right hand, keep her at bay, stop her from getting in too close, and really utilise that jab. It was a very solid performance. Mckenna, she was able to utilise her grappling, but used it, in my opinion, too late, too soon. I think Ellis was controlling the range, the centre of the octagon. She was putting the pressure on, just sort of dominating the fight from bell to end. But Mckenna showed tons of heart. She even thought she won the fight, and it was pretty close. I have to admit, those takedowns I did think were making a big difference. I think had she had more time and utilised them earlier on in the fight, then I think she would have won. But Mckenna is only 22 years old. She's the youngest female fighter in UFC, so there's tons of time and tons of improvements for her to be made, so she's in no rush. So I don't think this is a huge loss for her. It was a split decision, a very close, competitive fight, but I'd say Ellis Reed's striking was a huge problem for her. She did have quite a reach advantage over her, but absolutely no shame in Mckenna. I'm sure she'll get back in the win column. She's got a great team around her. As for what's next for Ellis Reed, hopefully now she can get some top names in the division and work her way up through the division. It was a solid performance from her. But moving on to the next fight, we had Jack Shaw versus Timur Valiev. Now this was an amazing fight, in my opinion, deserved fight of the night. I mean, that third round was one of the best rounds I've seen so far this year. Coming into this fight, Jack Shaw was 15-0, undefeated, being compared to the likes of GSP by a lot of other fighters, so he had tons of hype, tons of momentum to live up to, and he definitely delivered, as well as Timur Valiev. I mean, the dude showed tons of heart, tons of grit, wouldn't back down. He got hurt several times in the third round and still stayed in there, still put up a great fight against Jack Shaw. The first two rounds were extremely competitive. Both guys were getting each other back on takedowns. As soon as one guy got one, the other one got it back. So it was a very close, competitive fight by both men. Jack Shaw's got tons of heart. He's got great striking. He's got great wrestling. And he's only quite young in the UFC. He's only, I believe, 27 years old. Still quite young in his career. Got tons of time to improve and get better, which I'm sure he will. I think this win definitely puts him in the top tier end of the division. Hopefully he can get a top 15 guy next. I know Dana said it's quite tough to match him up against opponents because no one seems to want to fight him, and I imagine after this fight it's still going to be the same, because that kid ain't going anywhere. He's got a gas tank for days and he never backs down, so he's a tough fight in the bantamweight division, in an already stacked division. I'm pretty sure he will line up well with the contenders in the division. But moving on to the next fight, and the fight that I was most looking forward to, Nikita Krylov versus Paul Craig. Now this was a brilliant fight whilst it lasted. Very crazy finish by Paul Craig. At one point it looked like he was about to get finished. Nikita Krylov came out straight away, took Paul Craig to the ground, had Paul Craig on his back, which was a very dangerous position to be in, but I don't think Nikita Krylov saw no threat. He was winning the exchanges on the ground, and Paul Craig was able to slip him, catch him in a triangle choke, which was just beautiful transitioning. It was great to watch. It was completely unexpected. As I say, at one point I thought the fight was going to be stopped, but Paul Craig's got tons of heart, very smart, very tactical. He's got the best jiu-jitsu in the light heavyweight division. He's one of the best grapplers in the UFC right now. I mean, I think he's got the most submissions in light heavyweight history, which is absolutely crazy. He also called out Anthony Smith next for his next fight, which I think is a great fight for him. I think he'd wipe the floor with Anthony Smith, and that's no disrespect to Anthony Smith. He's a vet in the light heavyweight division. He's also on a win streak right now, but Paul Craig's grappling is second to none. As soon as he takes you down, or you even take him down, it's only a matter of time before he's going to catch you in a submission. So great fight, and this was the fight that I was telling everyone to make sure you tune in and watch this one, because it's going to deliver, and it certainly did. Didn't last very long. Great performance from Paul Craig. Can't wait to see where the UFC put him next, whether they'll put him back in London, whether they'll have a card in Scotland, which I know he wants, which would be great. But the next fight on the card was Shamil Abdurakhimov versus Sergey Pavlovich. Now this was a big fight for Shamil coming into this one. Shamil was on a 3-fight losing streak. Fair enough, he's lost to some of the biggest names in the division, but this was a big fight for him to get back in the win column, cement himself as a top 10 in the heavyweight division. A big opportunity for Sergey. I believe he was number 15, so this now puts him in the top 10 of the division and gets him in there with some big names in his weight class. It didn't last very long, lasted 1 round only. Sergey was able to clip Shamil, put him down and end him with some nasty ground and pound. Shamil's defense is always very low, his chin's always up in the air, so he's very easy to capitalize on it and get the finish. He has been knocked out quite a few times in his recent fights. As I say, big win for Sergey. Couldn't be happier for him. As I say, very competitive fighter, great, well-rounded fighter, and I think he will be a problem for the top tier end of the division. But moving on to the last fight on the prelims was Mike Grundy versus Mccann Murakami. Now this was a big fight for both guys. Both guys really needed a win. Both guys were on 3-fight losing streaks. So this was a big night for their careers, and Mccann was able to get the submission in the very first round. Mike Grundy made a bit of a mistake. He went for a takedown. Fair enough, that is his main strategy. He is a good grappler, so I don't blame him for wanting to go to the ground with Mccann. But Mccann was able to capitalise that and counter that with a guillotine. Now you got to feel sorry for Mike Grundy. This was a big fight for him, not for his career, but mentally he had a lot going into this one. His dad is unfortunately dying of cancer, and I think he's only got a certain amount of time to live. So you got to feel for Mike Grundy. I mean, to get the win would have been insane for him. I mean, he must be gutted right now. I hope the UFC decide to keep him, because he's got tons of heart and he's got such a killer mentality. If you look at his stare downs and his face offs, he's always very intense and always comes ready to fight. So I hope the UFC do keep him and give him at least one last shot. But this is a big win for Mccann. Definitely puts him back into the mix, gets him back in the win column, gets him back facing some good names in the featherweight division. Very happy for him, very entertaining fighter. He was coming off some pretty devastating losses, but I'm happy that he was able to get back in the win column. But kicking off the main card, we had Jai Herbert versus Ilya Toporia. Now this was a big fight for both guys. Jai Herbert coming off a big knockout over Karma Worthy. So this was a big chance for Jai to beat an undefeated prospect in Ilya Toporia and put him back in the mix at lightweight and getting paid in some big names. Jai's had a rough run in the UFC so far. His debut he faced Francisco Trinaldo, then he faced Renato Moicano, who just lost in the co-main event to Rafael dos Anjos, and then he's coming in against a guy like Ilya Topuria, who had all the hype on him. Very dominant fighter, undefeated. So you got a feel for the guy. He's only faced the best in the UFC in his run so far. Big win for Ilya Toporia and a big comeback, because at one point in the first round, Herbert hit him with a beautiful head kick, and I honestly thought the fight was over, but he was able to stay in there and get the victory in the second round to knock Herbert out with a beautiful sort of right overhand, sent him straight to the mat. Very deadly, vicious knockout. Very big win for Ilya. I know he called out Paddy the Baddy next, but I think that's a stupid call out, because I think Paddy would absolutely wipe the floor with him and destroy him. I think Paddy's got better things to do and better opponents to fight next. I think Ilya should go back down to featherweight where he belongs and maybe try face some opponents in there, face people actually his own size and weight, because Paddy would drop that dude in seconds, mark my words. But that being said, I can't discredit the win, because he is a great fighter, very well-rounded. He's got great grappling in Ilya and striking. You know, I don't know where Jai goes next. I mean, hopefully the UFC does sort of give him some easier fights in the division. I mean, there is no easy fight in the UFC, but just give him some fights that, you know, are more stylistically appealing to him. He's had a tough run so far, but I believe he can bounce back and get back in the win column and go on a win streak again. He's a former Cage Warriors champion, and he did look good in the first couple of rounds until he got dropped. But the next fight was Molly Mccann versus Luena Carolina, and this was a brilliant fight from Molly Mccann. She completely dominated Luena Carolina from bell. So when it finished, I mean, Molly Mccann's boxing, her grappling, she just completely outclassed Luena in every aspect of the game. You know, Molly is one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC right now, in my opinion, especially after that beautiful spinning elbow knockout that she has just had over Luena. I mean, nobody saw that coming. That was fast, rapid, completely unexpected, and I'm not going to lie, when I watched that, guys, I was completely in shock. I had to watch it a good 2 times just to actually take in what just happened, but it was one of the most vicious, deadly knockouts I have seen in a women's fight. The best knockout in UFC women's history, in my opinion, and not just that, but the knockout of the year so far. I mean, it's going to be hard to beat that, because that spinning elbow was just crisp and it was perfect. A brilliant way to cap off a dominant performance for Molly Mccann. She's a huge superstar now. If you didn't know who Molly Mccann was going into this fight, you definitely do now, because that knockout was just insane. But hopefully from this fight she can get a top 15 or a ranked opponent. I think she'd destroy anyone the UFC puts in her way. She always shows tons of heart. She always comes to fight and put on a show. As I say, very entertaining, a great fighter, very well rounded, and I think she's got a bright future ahead of her. But the next fight on the main card was Gunnar Nelson versus Takashi Sato. Now, Takashi Sato was a late replacement for this fight. Gunnar Nelson had been out of the octagon for almost 3 years, so this was a big fight coming in to this one for him. You know, this was a big fight to get back in the win column, but prove that he's one of the best grapplers in the welterweight division, and I think he kind of proved that. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but it was a very dominant, good win for Gunnar Nelson. As I say, comes in after nearly 3 years out, dominates a very tough opponent, and yeah, you can't fool him. I mean, you know, he looked very calm and composed in there. He looked very slick, very sharp. So a good win for him. Hopefully he can face some top names in the welterweight division. Where this will put him in the rankings and who it will put him near to, I don't know. Where he fits in the welterweight division, considering there is so many killers coming up, I don't know. But hopefully he can get a big matchup next, and hopefully he continues to fight in London, you know, continues to, as I say, come on a win streak and potentially get into the top tier end of the division again. But I need to talk about the next 3 fights. These ones were absolutely epic. Cannot wait to break down Paddy Pimler versus Kazula Vargas. Now, the crowd was absolutely electric for Paddy Pimler. Even before he came in, after Molly's big win, they were chanting his name. So this was a big fight for Paddy coming into this one. He had a lot of hype, a lot of people saying, oh, he's not as good as he thinks he is, he's just all hype. But no, he chucked that out the window because Paddy Pimler is the real deal. He is one of the best grapplers in the UFC right now. I mean, fair enough, he hasn't faced top tier competition yet, but for his debut, he has shown some incredible skill in his striking, his grappling. Very well-rounded fighter right now. I think he's going to be a huge threat for the lightweight division. You know, whether he chooses to take it slow or he faces a top 15 next, I think he's a deadly fighter. Fair enough, his defense needs working on, but his grappling and his combinations, he puts it all together. The dude is a huge superstar, a huge draw for the UFC, and he definitely proved that last night. The crowd was just going ballistic for him, and that win capped it all off. It was just insane to see the reception he got from the fans. He was able to get Kazula in a rear naked choke. You know, Kazula was kind of dominating him for the first couple of minutes of the fight. You know, he got him with a big punch, sent Paddy down to the ground, took him down. Paddy was able to get back up, like get him on like a hip toss. It was a very good takedown, very powerful. You could hear the slam. It was a great takedown from Paddy. Sunk in the rear naked choke. Beautiful, beautiful first round submission. He's had 2 first round finishes in his UFC career so far, so you couldn't ask for a better run in the UFC's 2 finishes over 2 tough names, you know, so hats off to him. The dude's a huge superstar in the UFC right now. I wish him all the best for his UFC career. Hopefully, as I say, he can go on a run and climb up the ranks and become champ. I think he's got that potential. I think he's got that Conor McGregor aura about him where he's just going to draw tons of attention and eyes to the sport. So, great win for Paddy. Can't wait to see who he faces next. Hopefully, he'll return maybe in Anfield or a venue in Liverpool where he sells out the crowd. Main event would be perfect. But moving on to the next fight is Arnold Allen versus Dan Hooker. Now, this was a big fight for Arnold Allen. You know, this was a big chance for him to get a credible name on his resume and spring him forward into title contention in the featherweight division. And oh my God, he proved that tenfold. I mean, his performance was insane. I completely did not expect him to destroy Dan Hooker in the first round. Completely knocked him out. Brilliant performance from Arnold Allen. I thought this was going to be a tactical striking battle. I thought it was going to be a 3-round fight of the night kind of thing, but Arnold Allen just destroyed him, and I don't think anyone expected him to do this against Dan Hooker. I mean, Dan Hooker's one of the toughest, most game fighters in the UFC. He'll take on any fighter, anywhere, anytime, and he proved that with this fight. So this was a big fight for Arnie, but a big fight for Dan Hooker. This was Dan Hooker's chance to get back into title contention in the featherweight division, climb up the ranks again. You know, you got a feel for him. He's seems like a really good guy, a really good fighter. Very fun to watch. But this was Arnold Allen's night. I mean, you can't take anything away from Arnold Allen. He gets better and better every fight. I mean, the Sadiq Youssef fight, in my opinion, was a tremendous performance from him. This fight was just such a big night for him. As I say, he's on a 10-fight winning streak now. He's surpassed Alexander Volkanovski. He's called out Calvin Kattar, which I think is the perfect name for him. It'll put him in the top 5. It'll put him directly in line for a title shot if he is able to get through Calvin, which I think he is more than capable of doing. Calvin tends to gas out pretty quickly in this fight, so Arnie will take advantage of that, and I think he'll destroy him pretty quickly, just as he did with Dan Hooker. As I say, couldn't be happier for Arnold Allen. I mean, the sky is the limit for this dude, and I definitely think he will be champ one day in the featherweight division. But moving on to the main event, Alexander Volkov versus Tom Aspano. Now, this was a huge fight for Tom Aspano. His first main event, his first time fighting in front of a fully packed arena. His first time fighting a very tough fighter in Alexander Volkov, a ranked fighter, number 6. So there was a lot going in to this fight for Tom. He had a lot to prove, not just to himself, but to the media, to the fans. Can he perform well in front of a crowd? Can he perform well at the top tier end of the division? And oh my God, did he prove that. He destroyed Alexander Volkov. He made it look easy. And now if you look at what Curtis Blaydes did Cyril Gane did. They couldn't finish Alexander Volkov. It took him 25 minutes to go to a decision to win on points. Tom Aspano destroyed him in the first round via submission, got him in a nasty armbar, and you could tell Alexander Volkov was in so much pain. I mean, he showed a great display of striking. I mean, the first encounter we had, he hit him with about 3 strikes, which were rapid. He's got hands like a frickin' bantamweight. I've never seen any strikes so fast for a heavyweight. I mean, it was incredible. His takedowns, he was able to get Volkov in a nice little trip. It was like a takedown going backwards kind of thing. I'm not like a grappling expert, but that takedown looked very impressive. Even dominated him on the ground, got him with some nasty elbows, cut and busted Volkov early on in the fight. Volkov didn't even have a chance to get going. He caught him with a few kicks, but nothing that hurt. Tom Aspano sent him on the back foot. Aspinall walked forward the entire time and just dominated and destroyed him. And what a huge win for Aspinall's career. Like, this puts him in the top 5. This puts him up against the Tai Tuivasas, the Miocic, the Cyril Ganes. He's one fight away from winning a world title, in my opinion. If he beats a guy like Tuivasa or Gane or Miocic, he's in there for the belt, and I believe he will be the first UK champion since Michael Bisping. This is his time to shine, and I know he's always said he wants to take things slow, but after that performance, he's one of the best heavyweights in the world right now. I think he can take on anyone in the division and be victorious, whether it be the likes of Ngannou, as I say, Miocic, Gane. I mean, there's so many great fights for him in the division. The sky is the limit for him, because as I say, he's a tough fight for anyone in that division, and he put everyone on notice, because if you're in the top 5, you recognise the threat of Tom. He's got grappling for days, his striking, his jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's a well-rounded heavyweight, and I don't think we've seen a heavyweight like him in a very long time. For me, I'd love to see him go up against Cyril Gane. I think stylistically they match up very well. Their striking is very similar. We haven't seen too much of Gane's grappling, which I think that would be Tom's advantage. Tom would have the grappling advantage. So it'd be cool to see how Gane does against a jiu-jitsu specialist. But as I say, guys, incredible night of fights. Had to talk about all of them because the performances were unreal. You know, I'm still buzzing even talking about it now. I'm absolutely still buzzing over it. I mean, I just still can't get over how dominant the UK fighters were on this fight card. Let me know down in the comment section below your favourite performance, because in my opinion, my favourite performance, you can't knock Paddy or Molly, because those performances were incredible, but for me it has to be Tom. The way he just dispatched and disposed of Volkov so quickly just was mind-boggling. I mean, as I say, he's true talent in the heavyweight division. Molly's knockout, one of the best knockouts I've ever seen. But as I say, I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the night of fights, excuse me. Stay tuned for a Fortnite new season reaction. I'm going to be posting 2 videos today, so I'm going to spoil you guys. I would have done 4 videos in 2 days. I hope you guys have been enjoying all the content recently, and it's only going to get better from here. We've got more UFC videos coming. Moon Knight's coming out next week, so I'm going to be doing a video on that. So stay tuned, stay blazed, and enjoy. Peace.